All right, let me get this set up here. There we go. Better. All right, hopefully David will be joining in just a second. Bear with us. We'll get going. All righty. Good morning, good morning. Thank you for joining. All righty, just waiting for David to join. There he is. All righty. David. Sorry, hold on one second. All right, David right here. Oh, unable to join. Something just happened. Let's see. Something is going on here. Hold on one second. Let me try to get this happen. Alrighty, just waiting for David. Hold on. Adding it in. There we go. All right.
How you doing?
Hey, how are you?
I'm
Can you hear
good.
me?
Yeah, can hear you great.
Excellent. Thank you for joining.
Absolutely. By the way, when I picked this date, when I worked with Jackie to pick the date, I thought this is great. It's going to be a Monday. I'm going to be able to hit the week with a ton of positivity. It's June 1st, so I can really set the month off with a ton of positivity.
Yeah.
But you guys didn't tell me I was going to be following Danny Meyer. Huge reason I got into the industry, and so thanks for setting the bar. Kind of, impossibly high for me, but
No problem.
really excited to
Well,
be
we
here.
had when we had Danny on last week. I mean, we had a ton of people join us. It was fantastic, but we had some technology issues. So there was real problems with the Wi-Fi, and it kept cutting in and out. And their interview was cut short. So
Ah,
it's okay if technology goes well today, you're going to surpass him. It's all going to be good.
Danny, I'll pick up the slack for you. I'm sure you're watching.
We're here for you, Danny. We're here for you. All right, let me just do a couple of quick admin things as we go here, and then we can get going on the discussion as we normally do. So tomorrow, I'm talking with Bennett Thomas, who's a good friend of mine. Used to be in finance at Hersha Hospitality Trust for many years, and now just started his own venture capital investment platform called Triple Impact Capital. And we're going to talk about investing in travel and hospitality and what a triple bottom line looks like. So that's going to be a super interesting discussion. Wednesday, Alan Magrino, who's a member of our advisory board, is interviewing president and CEO of Heights Vineyards in Napa, and his name is Carlton McCoy. That'll be cool. Thursday, we have Paul Brady of Travel and Leisure. That'll be awesome. And then Friday, we finish out strong with Brad Wilson, the president of Ace Hotels, with my partner, Eric Warner. So that's cool. So all really great, good stuff. So want to thank again our presenting sponsor, Ivy by Go Moment, as well as RCCB Law and Hanley Communications, sponsorship opportunities on the website, donation opportunities on the website, and all that. So help to support us. We'd appreciate it. David, we're super excited to have you. Obviously, have interacted with and known about Graduate for years and years. So that's great, but haven't really had a chance to have a discussion with you before. So just let's start by talking about actually your background, not Graduate, for a second. Where did you come from? What's your background, and how did you get into the industry?
Yeah, absolutely. So I like to say I kind of fell into the industry, unlike a lot of my peers and partners. I went to school at Cornell primarily to play baseball, not to attend the hotel school. However, while I was there, I truly did find a passion in hospitality. I've always shared my first internship. I needed, at Cornell and many of the hotel schools, you have to work 800 hours of internships to graduate as part of your requirements. And here I was, I was a 18, 19-year-old baseball player, and I needed to manage an internship as well as my summer baseball league in California. And I happened to find an opportunity to work for the Ronald McDonald House Charities of Southern California. and truly fell in love with the hospitality side of our business. I've always hung on to something that was said to me by the executive director there, which was, and anyone who isn't familiar with the Ronald McDonald House Charities, it's providing no cost, low cost housing to families whose children are typically always staying in a hospital, and they're located across the street. It's an amazing program. And she said to me, our aim was, everybody expects the best hospitality in the best times of their lives, or honeymoons, anniversaries, birthdays, things like that. But our aim was to give the best hospitality in the worst times of people's lives. And I think that really kind of painted this picture for me, for the industry, about, the people side of things, the outreach, what we can do, the backdrop that a hotel or a stay can really be in someone's lives. And that was really the turning point for me. I loved the real estate side of the industry. I think that was really, I was fascinated with the niche of the real estate side, and then pairing that up with this kind of really heartfelt hospitality. So when I graduated, I was the first analyst hired at Pebblebrook Hotel Trust. At the time, we had 3 hotels, 12 people. I had no idea the ride I was going to go in over 3.5 years, and 30 plus acquisitions, about $1 billion of equity raises, and just being exposed to John, Ray, and Tom, the executives there, was kind of, as a 22-year-old who was ready to sponge everything up in the industry, was kind of mind-blowing. And I just happened while I was there, John Forts, the CEO, has really helped institutionalize independent hotels, tons of Kimptons, Viceroys. We were the first owner of a first third-party owner of a Mondrian. We owned the Redberry in West Hollywood, or Hollywood, with SBE. So I happened to work a lot in those portfolios. So I started to really fall in love with the independent side, the boutique side. I got to be exposed to a lot of what I consider are the best-in-class operators in our industry on the independent boutique. And then 6 years ago, I had an opportunity pop up to join Ben Weprin, founder and CEO of AJ Capital Partners, who had this idea to launch a hospitality brand, an independent hospitality brand in hotel towns. I had a few people tell me I was crazy. I was leaving a portfolio of hotels in San Francisco and LA and the Mondrian, and lots of the sexiness of that portfolio for towns like Ann Arbor and Oxford, Mississippi, and Columbia, South Carolina. But I truly did believe in the mission and the idea of creating differentiated experiences in these towns that were super dynamic, a total white space in the industry. Our competition when we launched this were, your middle of the road branded products, typically on the roadside. And so I really loved the mission. As I've shared with everybody, I thought it was going to be a cute 8 to 10 hotel portfolio, nice little execution. And here we are with 23 hotels and another 11 or so in development that should open over the next 18 months. So it's been a wild ride. And then over my 6 years, I started as an associate in acquisitions. I've worked my way through every kind of role in the company. We are fully integrated, so we've got development, design in-house. It's been a really fun process to get my arms around kind of every component of the industry over the 6 years. So it's been a rocket, and it's been a fun ride.
Yeah, for a young guy, you've done pretty darn well. That's good. Good for you. That's fantastic. And obviously, Tim Franzen, who was president before you, a friend in the industry, came and joined us actually a couple times at Indie Congress, which is cool. So when we're able to meet again, we're going to hold you to it.
Absolutely.
We're going to have you join us. Absolutely, for sure. That's great. For those of you who are just joining us now or who are on, if you have questions for David, please post them in the comments. We'll try to get to them and sort of see what as many of those as we can answer as possible. So, David, you guys have 23 hotels right now, and obviously the company is called Graduate for a reason. Mm-hmm. It's focused on universities, university towns, that kind of thing. So how have those towns been, you can talk a little bit about your portfolio and what the current state is, but how have those towns also been, not only the hotels, but the towns themselves, how have they been doing? And do they seem to be sort of opening up a little bit now, or what's going on? So give us an update on the.
So I'll give you the life cycle, or the last 12 weeks as I feel it is.
Sure. Oh,
Really what was going on. Am I still there? I got a phone call.
yeah, you're good. You're good now. You paused
Yeah.
for a second, but you're good.
Yeah, perfect. We really started monitoring everything that was kind of coming our way in January and February, and it was really because we have so many projects under development. We were monitoring our FF&E that was being developed in China, the exposure of any potential risk to development timelines. So we had put a team together, and we were really monitoring it. And then obviously, I think we had the first case. We do have a hotel in Seattle, which kind of early on was a hotbed. And we kept saying to each other, well, this appears to be an international gateway city issue, big group issue. We have very little exposure. We have massive regional diversity just by the nature of aligning ourselves with universities across the country. And so we actually sat there pretty naively at the time and said, we think our risk is relatively minimal to this. And I can tell you when we wrote our business plan, nobody assumed every university was going to close. I mean, that was just never a possibility in our mind of something that would happen. In fact, the universities have been, and we believe will continue to be, something that really provides, cyclical downturn kind of risk mitigator, because the universities produce so much in travel and business on a regular basis. So, we as a portfolio, once kind of universities started to close for the safety, we followed suit and also shut down every hotel in the portfolio at this point, probably 10 weeks ago. And that was, purely because the universities drive so much of this business in the markets and really produce the backbone. I will tell you, as we start to see a lot of green shoots and the light at the end of the tunnel, or whatever expression you want to use, that I feel like I continue to read in all these research reports and thought pieces coming out. We are preparing to start reopening the portfolio here in the coming weeks. A lot of that is going to be aligned with southern states that may be a little bit more liberal in terms of their regulatory environment or how they're enforcing. And it's not so much because of the hotel stay. It's really because of, if you're going to travel to Oxford, Mississippi, which is arguably the cultural hotbed for the state of Mississippi, has fewer than 1,000 hotel rooms. It's nearly every weekend is sold out as a market. The reason you're going there is also because you can go to Roanoke, which is Faulkner's house. You can go to the restaurants. All these destinations really drive these markets, and they are amazing drive-to leisure destinations. But without that, there isn't a lot of business that's going to come through these summer months. So as we see those start opening, it's typically down in the South so far, but we do see it starting to come up through the Midwest and the Northeast, and eventually in the West Coast. We're opening our hotels to follow suit. And then, the final piece of this, as we see it, is the universities, which we've had close conversations with every university partner. Everyone has come out and said, they are going to get back to as close to normal as possible in the fall. Some have announced significant testing programs for everybody that will come or step foot on campus. And so it's pretty tremendous. And I think for us, what I get really inspired by, we're in these conversations, and there's a very good chance that a cure or an antibody, something is going to come from one of our partners. All of them are researching how to overcome this. And I think that optimism is kind of what has always inspired me about the towns that we're in. And then ultimately, I think it's we see it, and we have a real belief that the university system and these colleges and our partners, they're the backbone to the country, and they're going to come back, just as strong. They certainly, they're planning for a fall like they've never had to plan for in hundreds of years. But higher education is such a cornerstone of our country. They will be back, and they're going to be back better than ever.
Yeah, I hope so. And actually, we're waiting. My son is waiting. My son is 19. He took a gap year this past year, actually. Totally, independent of everything that's going on. He's ready to go back to school. We're ready to start college this fall. He hasn't started yet. So he really would love to go. And, when I said to him, well, what if it's only online? He's like, I don't know, but he's ready to go at this point.
Right.
So we're waiting to hear from his little school in the Northeast right now, find out what they're doing, as are many, many other parents and students. Obviously, the University of California system said that they're going totally remotely this fall. But I wonder if that'll change as more universities are now trying to figure out a way to get in-person campus stuff happening. So obviously you're affected by the universities, yes, and we think that those are going to be coming back. And I agree with you. I think that they are going to come back. Yep. But those college towns that you're in are very vibrant locations, like the one you mentioned in Mississippi. But there are lots of college towns you're in. You're in Ann Arbor, Michigan. You're in, like lots of really interesting little towns that have these major universities. Yep. And so there's a broad base of not only the university, but there's food, there's other attractions. How have those towns been, are they still attracting people as things start to slowly open up now? Are people getting out, and are those places that are sort of first locations where people are going to sort of head as things open up now, or not really? Yeah,
absolutely. And I'll share two kind of quick anecdotes. One being, when we launched the portfolio, we certainly do have a few examples of towns that are very, very reliant on the university or solely reliant, but the whole goal was to really identify markets that had secondary or tertiary demand drivers. And, we have several cities like Madison, Wisconsin, Richmond, Virginia, which are state capitals. We have several markets that, because of the university system, also have the largest medical facilities in the state. So like a Charlottesville, Virginia actually has the largest hospital in the state of Virginia. So these are a lot of drivers that have been churning, even throughout this, and we start to see really picking up as this all starts to reopen. And then I'll share, another anecdote that has us really optimistic is we have a cluster kind of in the mid-Atlantic between Annapolis and Richmond and Charlottesville. And, we track, like much of our partners, Google AdWords and what people are searching. And we see a significant amount of searches for these, 2 to 3 hour drive to markets that will drive a lot of this business coming out of that. And that obviously for Washington, D.C., 3 of those towns are amazing kind of summer destinations because of the vibrancy of the communities that are there. And that's where we think, the summer is going to end up ultimately coming, is from a lot of those types of markets. And, those, I think going back to the whole thesis is, those towns are so vibrant because of the universities themselves. That's what drives these communities. That's what has created, amazing arts and music and, food and beverage and everything into just being truly special places. And I think we also really believe, something that has been a huge part of our marketing pitch throughout this has been, this idea of college. You said your son, wants to go, like he can't wait to go. And it's almost heartbreaking thinking about my excitement at his age kind of going and the idea that either that might be delayed or he has to put it off for a little bit. But there's also something about us thinking about our, optimistic times and carefree times. And, this idea of almost going home that a college represented to so many people. And we think those ideas and those feelings and that emotion and nostalgia is going to be so important coming out of this, that we've all been cooped up in this kind of super negative time in our houses. And, there's nothing better than going kind of back to your alma mater, back to the town that feels so familiar. You had so many of your formative years, your experiences. And so, we're creating experiences. That's kind of what we're seeing coming out of this, is how do you kind of capture that in a time where optimism is so important to the consumers and to our customers.
So important. You're totally right. But the problem is especially for a freshman going to school, he's going to a school with 1,800 kids, so it's teeny. It's like not a lot bigger than his high school. The whole experience is being on campus there and sort of taking part of it. So if they say, "Oh, we're only going to do it online," my inclination is to say to them, "Skip it until you can go to campus," because half or more, half the experience, obviously studying, you're learning, all that kind of stuff, but also the other half is spending time with a whole bunch of people your age and exploring and, that experience. So we'll see. I'm hopeful, you know.
Yeah, it's like the
Hopeful.
most amazing social experience that you ever go through,
Right,
right? I mean, you're
exactly. Of
thrown
your,
in,
it's
everybody's
so,
in level playing field. You don't know anybody, or maybe you have a small group of friends, and it's just,
yeah,
it's so formative and so important. And I think we agree, and I think that's what we keep hearing from these universities, that they do know that they can't take they can't take everything online. I think, will we see kind of higher education shift slightly and have a little bit more of that component? Maybe, probably. It's
yeah,
probably time, but you also, you can't sacrifice the social component. You can't sacrifice the education of being in person, and you can't sacrifice and eliminate a lot of these classes. You can't take a lab and put that online. You can't do a lot of things that have to be done in person. So
agreed.
um, it's going to be interesting.
Agreed, agreed. Yeah, yeah. We'll see what happens. I don't know. It's definitely an interesting time. We're just going to have to sort of wait and see. But I'm hopeful that it'll turn out okay. So one question we had on here, which I thought was an interesting one, because I'm a big fan of this project of yours, also, because I know some folks who've taken part of it. But your Roosevelt Island project in New York at the Cornell Tech campus. What's happening with that, and where are you in the process of opening that hotel, and what's going on there?
Absolutely, 4.5 years of my life in that project. So it's my baby, and I can't wait for it to come to fruition here.
Yeah,
So we were very lucky that having as many development projects as we have going, that the vast majority were able to continue through the last several months. There were only two that we had shutdowns issued, which were in, surprisingly, East Lansing, Michigan, and Roosevelt Island. So that project was shut down for approximately 8 weeks. We were set to deliver in June. It has been delayed probably a few months, but will be delivered at the end of this year, and kind of opened on an appropriate timeline, whatever that looks like for New York City. It is an unbelievably dynamic project. What Cornell is doing on Roosevelt Island with their tech campus, they are also talk about a school that is looking and coming up with treatments and everything as it relates to kind of coping through coronavirus and COVID-19. They're at the forefront of that, and we honestly cannot wait to open that project. It is so dynamic. It is crazy. The views are insane from Roosevelt Island, completely unobstructed across
it's
the river.
amazing.
So
So beautiful. Yeah.
we're excited. We're sad. We were really hopeful. We had a plan to get it open for the July 4th fireworks. But ultimately, the city made a decision to shut down a lot of projects, which is unfortunate because we were like 8 weeks away. We were at the tail end, but it is what it is, and we're excited to open it later this year.
Good, good. Are you back under construction now or not yet?
We are. We did get a special use to restart, finish the building, and then start. I mean, we were weeks away from FF&E moving into the building. We actually started some FF&E going in, so we were very close.
You're pretty close. Yeah, yeah. I'm a partner in a deal here outside of Philadelphia that's a multifamily apartment deal, and we were closed down about a month and a half, 2 months before finishing. So we just reopened recently and are continuing.
Perfect.
But yeah, it's disappointing, but at the same time, it's for the safety of all the construction workers and everybody else. So it'll happen when it happens. But that's good. So a couple more sort of questions, thoughts that I have. Talk about your how Graduate looks at food and beverage as part of your offerings. Is that something that's important, or is it a little bit? I don't know. Is a little bit sort of a side thing for you guys? You don't place as much more on the room side, or how do you think about food and beverage for your operations?
Yeah, no, it's vital. It's absolutely vital to our operations. So, creating a space that really draws the locals in, I think is so key to our experience. It's so key to I'd argue, the independent hotel experience. Much of our competition, it really started also with much of the competition being limited service, not really offering much. So it became almost a box that we could check to really start to differentiate ourselves. But what we found is, every one of our hotels has what I'd call like a coffee shop, and we created a brand called Poindexter Coffee. It's supposed to embody every kind of collegiate college town coffee shop experience you can have, and kind of package it up. It's a place that students would start studying in the morning, and sometimes we have to kick them out. sometimes I don't even spend any money in that space, right? Or it's very minimal. But it's about creating a vibrancy around the lobby. It's about converting some of those students to truthfully being word of mouth sales members of our sales team. They're telling their parents where to stay. They're telling their friends where to go. And so that coffee shop experience has become so important for kind of our local markets. And then we always couple that with some sort of a destination, whether it's a restaurant. We typically have very few of those, but more of a bar, a rooftop bar, something really dynamic and vibrant. And it's absolutely essential to our experience. I will say, that is probably the most stressful part right now as we start to look at reopenings, because that is not consistent across the country. And I'll just say as the president of our company, as we're making all these plans to come out, it's been, I think what we're spending the most time on right now is saying, okay, well, a lot of the things that we use to differentiate ourselves, whether that's programming or food and beverage, it's almost been taken from us because of the virus. So how do we ensure that we continue to be different when we're almost being told to look a lot like our competitor right next door or down the street? How do we continue to be different? And food and beverage and what we're trying to do in the walls and for the locals and the community when we reopen will be a huge part of it. But it's taken 95% of our thinking probably through the last 10 weeks, ensuring we have something that is as equally great as it was when we closed the hotel.
So you just made an interesting point, though. How do you continue to differentiate yourself from your competitors? And you told me earlier that you're vertically integrated, so you have design internally, you have operations, you have development, all that. So on the design side, you have a design team that does this. You don't use outside designers, I'm assuming.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay, so do you, when you look at a hotel, a new property, either development, ground up, or an acquisition, do you look at a totally different design theme for every one of them, or are you trying to make them somewhat similar so that when you go to the graduate in Virginia and then you go to the graduate in Michigan, you're in the same type of property, or you just don't want you want a new experience every time? How do you look at that kind of stuff?
Yeah, no, you'd think by now, after having as many as we have had, they'd have some sort of a formula or whatever it is. But honestly, we start from scratch on every project, and we are maniacs about finding those unique stories about the town. And I think while we have scaled as quickly as we have over 5-6 years to the size that we are, which is we opened 9 hotels last year in 9 states. Like, most people would say you're nuts to do something like that. Especially outside of the franchise model.
As long as you don't mind sleeping only 3 hours a night, I think it's fine. Yeah.
I sleep like a baby. I got a lot of other guys that work much harder than me. No, I think, I think that's what has allowed us to stay really relevant and different. And a lot of people are talking about, quote, local design and things like that. And I don't want to put them down, but it's a lot of it's almost like a prepackaged experience that they're throwing in there, or they will go to one of these towns and they'll put the school colors on the wall and a pin it and say, hey, we've got a local experience tied to the university. It's not about that, right? It's about finding stories. It's about really engaging with guests on a totally different level. And so we start from scratch on everything. In the very beginning of this, when we opened our first hotel in Athens, Georgia, I remember interacting with some guests and they were like, this is amazing. This hotel was designed just for me, right? Like it felt so perfect for that town. And that was the biggest compliment. Now I'm still so proud to hear that. But I like to always correct people and say, there's more of these, right? Like, not only can you get this in Athens, Georgia, but Charlottesville, Virginia, Ann Arbor, and you're going to have a totally localized experience in each one. I think that's been the biggest evolution, is to continue to act like a collection of hotels that feel totally individual and stand on their own, each property, but still think like a brand in terms of how we measure ourselves, how we hold ourselves accountable, quality control, everything else. And that's kind of the sweet spot we're managing right now, and how we continue to grow.
Listen, I'm glad to hear you say it. I was hoping you wouldn't say that, you sort of, hey, we have this sort of basic standard and then we change it a little bit as we go along. I think that brain damage that you endure with each new project goes a long way to keeping a company interesting. Last week we had on Eric Jafari, Chief Development Officer of Lock Hotels. They're in the UK. They only have 4. They're smaller, but now they have a bunch that are, I don't know how many, I forget, at least that many, I think, in development. And each one of theirs is totally different. He said, you might walk into one and love it, and you walk into another and you don't like it, but that's okay.
Yep.
They're okay with that because they want them to feel totally different for whatever locale or geography that they're in. And it sounds like, at least to some extent, you're doing that. And I think that's great. That's what indie means. I mean, obviously we all use the word boutique to describe hotels, and I do as well sometimes, but really I prefer indie hotels, and that the meaning is independent, and that means you're independent from everything, really. Right. Even if you're in a group, you're independent. You have that feeling of independence, and that's wonderful. So yeah, it's great. As we're going to end up here in just another minute or so, but I want to give you an opportunity to add anything before we go to the people who are on the line here. Any last messages or anything you'd like to say before we get off?
I think we're just all chomping at the bit to get back at this. It's been a tough few months. I think it's been an amazing, I think the only thing that has been truly amazing about the last few weeks is how our industries come together, whether that is the entire hotel industry, lodging industry, but also the independent boutique industry as well. It's been something we're facing as a group, which is kind of crazy. And I've said to a lot of people that, we may come out with our proprietary cleaning program that is better than everything and guarantees complete safety. But if the entire industry, if we can't come together and really communicate safety and comfort, then people aren't going to be ready to hit the road. And so it's been,
yeah, totally agree.
That's been the kind of most, that's been the best part of this, and connecting with other CEOs and presidents of brands and companies, and how we're coming together to kind of do this together, I think is great. And so I think we're excited to get reopened. We will be reopened, I think, the entire portfolio by the end of summer. We're excited for hopefully a fall football season in some form or another. Yep. believe strongly in the longevity of these towns and the universities in our portfolio.
That's awesome. Well, listen, David, want to thank you for joining us today, number one. Number two, I don't know how good you were at baseball. Obviously, you had to be pretty good to play at Cornell, because I think they're Division I, but I'm glad that you chose hospitality over being a MLB player and, making the big bucks, that you decided to stay with us.
Just scrape along in the hospitality instead of those big bucks, right?
but glad to have connected with you today. Thank you very much for joining us. Looking forward to when we have the opportunity of actually all getting back together again. Is exciting. Indie Congress is all about sort of gathering and spending time with one another. So obviously we're shut down for the moment, but chomping at the bit to figure out how we can, get back together again. So Thank you very much again. I really appreciate it. And we'll be in touch.
Absolutely. Thank you for everything. Take care.
Not at all. Not at all. Thanks everybody for joining us. Talk to you soon. Take care.